Are you working on web development and really want to up your game on VS Code? If yes, this video is going to be for you. I'm going to be showing you some of the plugins and settings that I've been using on VS Code that has really boosted my productivity skills. So let's get started and let me show you my workflow. Okay, so I'm on this project right here, and first of all, I would like to show what is the kind of theme I'm using, what are the icons that I'm using. Nothing too fancy. As you can see, it's quite plain, but there is one small plugin that I've used. So we have this material icon theme which has been used over here, and I'm also using the material theme. So that's the two themes that I'm using. It gives me some nice little icons over here and also changes the styling a bit. You can also play around with few of the installed themes with material. So you can just open up the command palette. Now over here you can just search for theme, and over here you can select the color theme, and you can see there are a lot of them that are provided by default. The one that I generally use is this material theme high contrast. So this gives me a nice contrast between the text and so on. That's around the themes and the icons. The next thing, if you're working on multi-projects, just as me, if you're working as a full stack developer, you're going to be switching between the back-end projects and the front-end projects quite frequently. And if you're using some sort of microservice architecture, this is going to be even further. Now it becomes quite difficult to manage all the windows and switching between the windows. So I use a plugin for that as well, and that's called as the project manager. So if you just go back to the extensions, we have the project manager. So this is the plugin that I'm using. I already have that installed over here, and you can see that I have 3 projects that are set up. Now let's say, for example, I want to be adding a new project over here. I can just first of all open up a new VS Code. I can explore the project that I'm trying to add. Now I'm going to be using this project that I've developed for my Udemy course, and you can just explore the Udemy course as well if you're into front-end development and React. I'm going to be leaving the link of that in the description below. So for example, let's open up one of the projects here, maybe this one 99.1. Let's click on open, and you can see that I have now opened this project and have multiple windows open. Now when I want to be finding the other window, it becomes quite difficult, but thanks to project manager, what I can do is again open up the command palette. So over here I'll just open up project manager, and I'll say over here as save project 99.1, and that's it. My project has now been added to the project manager. So what I can do is I can just go to the project manager, and you can see I have all the available projects here. So it makes very easy to switch between the projects. You just click here and bam, you're in the other project. Even if you have the window closed, it does not matter. It just goes and opens that up in the new VS Code instance. I don't like to manage that in the same VS Code instance. It jumbles up the code a bit. So I like to keep all of the projects in different VS Code instances. So that's about project management and how do you deal with multiple projects. The next and pretty often used is Prettier. I think all of us already use it. So I already have Prettier plugin installed. So I'm pretty sure all of us use the same Prettier plugin. It's the most popular one. So that's right here. We have Prettier code formatter. I also have the Prettier file set up over here. It's right here, prettier.rc. Now, I'm not going to be talking about Prettier, but there are a few configurations that I'd like to talk about in Prettier as well. So what you need to do is you need to be opening up your settings. So you can just press the command and the comma button, or maybe control and comma if you're on Windows. This will open up this VS Code settings. If you just click on this top right button, you'll be able to explore the settings.json file. So the first setting that I would like you to enable is this editor default formatter. So this one tells you that I want to be always using Prettier when I'm doing the formatting. So this sets up the default formatter. Otherwise you're going to be having to set this Prettier for every single sort of configuration file. The next setting that you want to be enabling on VS Code is format on save. So here, if I just search for format on save mode and just make this to modifications. Now I'm making this as modification because you do not want to be updating the formatting for all the code that you have not written on a single file. Otherwise everyone is going to be blaming you when something goes wrong over there. I'm sure you have experienced that, where you just run the formatter and it formats the entire damn file and you have just changed one single line on that file. So make sure that you have this format on save just on the modifications. So with that done, if I just save this, you can also see that my screen just became big. Well, that's because of the window zoom method. So I generally like to keep this zoomed up when I'm doing some sort of recording, and that's exactly what happened. Now I'm at the zoom level 1. You can also control the zoom level by just setting some default values here. I'm going to be continuing on with the zoom level 1. Let's go and see if our Prettier is working. So let's open up this TypeScript file, And if I just make some edits over here and I control save, you can see that it has auto formatted this particular line. So that's pretty good and convenient. Now for the next part, if you're like me and you're working with a lot of architecture diagrams, you might be managing the architecture diagrams in different places. I used to do the same thing, but do you know there's a better way of doing it? So as we know that whenever our application grows, the architecture also gets changed, the code base gets changed, and finally it's very difficult to identify which is the architecture that current code base is following. So what I like to do is I like to sometimes keep the architecture with my code base itself. So for that, I'm going to be using a tool called as Draw.io, and this is like an open source tool which is also available on the website. Now to be linking that particular diagram to your application, you can be using a plugin called as Draw.io. So that's Draw.io. I already have that installed, as you can see. Now with that extension installed, what I can do is I can be basically opening up a new file and say over here as my architecture.draw.io. So once I do that and have the plugin installed, you can see that it's no more a code editor. It's actually a visual editor in which I can basically draw some diagrams and draw some awesome architectures. The good part about this is also versions, so that I can actually be versioning my code along with the architecture. So whenever you check out your code, you're not just checking out the code base, you're also checking out the architecture, and you can use that for referencing purposes. So this is pretty cool for me, and I use it pretty much on a regular basis. So let's check out the next one. And generally we do all our documentation in the markdown format. Now whenever you're working with markdown format, there's specific syntax that you need to be following. And for example, let's check out one of the markdowns over here, which is the readme.md. Now, for example, we have this markdown. Now you have some sort of syntax for doing the markdown formatting, but this is not very readable. You want a visual feedback as how this looks. Now what I use it, I'm going to be using another plugin for this. And this plugin is basically going to be inspired from the GitHub kind of markdown formatting. And in this, you can find the markdown preview GitHub styling. This is the one that I have installed. Now with this plugin installed, I can just again open the command palette and say as markdown open preview. And this gives me a light little preview over here. I can just open up on the side and I can start up formatting. So whenever I add any other stuff, you can see that it actually gets updated in real time in the markdown format. Now again, if you are like me and you like to add a lot of to-dos to your application, I'm sure you do. And there is a problem with that we generally forget the to-dos that we have added. We just add them and forget about it and hope that the next generation of developers are going to be fixing those to-dos. So that's generally how it happens. You're going to be finding a lot of code bases with a lot of to-dos. Okay, now we want to be getting organized with those to-dos so we can actually be coming back to them and solving them eventually. So what you can do is, let's suppose you have some sort of file. Let's open up something over here. Maybe if you have something in this pop-up. Now I know that I have this particular handle click function, which is not really working well. And I want to be refactoring this and I want to be adding some sort of stuff to it. Now, generally what you do is you just put over here and say as fix the optimizations, and we generally forget about it. Now what I have done over here is I've actually installed another plugin. It's called as to do tree. Now the cool part about this plugin is you can get organized very well. So what I can do is, instead of just saying fix my optimizations, I'm going to be putting a tag in front of this and say to do. Now you can see that the highlighting has been done. Now if I just open up my to do trees application here, it actually shows me all the to dos that are there in my application. So the one that we added right now in the button.js, that's present right here. It takes you right to the to do and you can get organized very well. So let's see the next one, and this is going to be more related to the coding part. So in this, we have the live server concept. So for example, if I just open up this application again, and if I just try to open up the src, I have this index.html, which I want to show. Now, generally, if you want to be just running a React application, you have the React server, you have the Vite server, and so on. But if you have a plain index.html, you do not have any server, you need to be installing something else. So again, go to the extensions and search for live server. Now, once you have this installed, you'll be able to see on the bottom right, you have this option of go live. So let's just click on the go live button, and it basically takes you to this page and it shows me the live preview of the current application. Now I can just go ahead and change something over here, and it's going to be dynamically updating on the browser as well. So that takes me to the next part. This is running on your local application. So as you can see, it is localhost and the 5500. Now, what if you want to be showing your father this particular application or your girlfriend this particular application that, hey, look at this awesome list that I have created. So you want to be exposing this application to the public internet. So how do you do that? You might need to run some sort of proxy or host this application somewhere. Well, there's an easier way to do it. Now VS Code gives something by default called as ports. So if you just open up your terminal, you should be seeing this tab here called ports. Now just click over here as forward port. The port that I want to be forwarding is 5500, which is my local server that was running. Let's click on enter. It's starting off the port forwarding system. It will ask you to actually sign in to GitHub for the first time when you do it. I already have done this, so it's not asking me. Now you can see that it has actually given me a nice little public address which can be accessed from anywhere in the world. So I just click on this. You can see that it has made this tunneling address. Now if I just go to the SRC, I see the same application which anyone can access. So that's pretty cool as well. Now a few more things around the development part is logging out the console logs. So over here, let's suppose you want to be logging this out. It's very nice. You have logged this out. Let's say we want to be logging out some sort of variables. So let's say, for example, you're getting some value over here, E, and you want to be logging this value out. So what happens over here is you're going to be saying something like console.log E, and then you just hope that you're going to be able to find this on the console. Then you are not able to find out because you have hundreds of logs running on your application. So what you do is, okay, I'm going to be putting up a more defined log by saying E and then paste it something like this. So now you know that, okay, this is the value of E, which is being printed out. Well, this is still not very useful and you have to write a lot of code. So for that reason, I use another plugin called as Turbo Logs. And you can see over here, Turbo Console Logs. I already have this installed. Now with this installed, you have some shortcuts that you can be exploring further. So for example, I can just select this over here and I can press the shortcut of Control Option L on my Mac, and over here it just adds a console log right here. So that's pretty convenient. I don't need to write all of this stuff out, and I have the console log actually telling me which is the function getting executed as well. So you also have the option of removing all of the logs. So I can just press as Options Shift and D, and it gets rid of all the logs that the Turbo Console log had added. Now this is also a very convenient kind of plugin that you should be exploring. Now this video is going to be incomplete without talking about AI. It's 2024, everyone is talking about AI, right? And many of the people are like, hey, AI is going to be taking away my jobs and so on. Well, if you use the AI in the right way, you're going to be actually benefiting a lot from it. So let me show you how I use AI for my productivity boost. So I have this application installed. You're going to be finding a lot of AI plugins. The one that I use is called as Codium. Now this is a free one, which you can just go ahead and install. I already have this installed. And you might be seeing a lot of fancy logs being shown up over here. As you can see over here, Codium, refactor, and so on, explain. So you can be using it for multiple purposes. So let's suppose you do not have any idea what the hell this code is all about. So you can just say explain, and it will actually read this code and explain you what this particular component does. You can ask follow-up questions on this to optimize it and so on. You can also use this for optimizing the code. So you can just go and select this and say Codium refactor and say that maybe clean up this code. And this will just do a processing. It will give you a new code base that it has created. You have the option of either accepting or rejecting it. So let's go ahead and accept it for now. And you can see that it has done some refactoring, changed the class name, made it more better, I guess. Do make sure that you review the code and not just click accept. That's like what I did. One another cool part over here is, let's suppose you want to be adding some code, and you generally do that by going to ChatGPT, asking it some questions, and then pasting the code from there. So let's suppose you want to be writing a function to generate some IDs. So you can just press as Command and I on a Mac. This opens up this Codium command prompt. Over here you can say as write a function or a function to generate unique IDs. So let's hit on enter. It's going to be processing the command and should be generating the function. So as you can see, it has given me a nice little function. You can just go ahead and accept this and start using this particular function. You can also use this for generating the TypeScript definitions, for generating the interfaces and so on. So it's pretty good as well. Now for VS Code to actually behave the way you want, you need to be tweaking a lot of settings, and few of the settings that I would like to talk about that really has helped me is a few settings around how the formatting is done and so on. I'm going to be showing you some of the custom settings that I have done. So I'll open up my command palette once again. So these are the settings that I have currently configured on my editor. And over here, the important one is the format on save, which we've already seen. And this is basically doing all the formatting using the Prettier plugin, and we are formatting only the modifications. The next very important one over here is called editor.linked editing. So this is something new also introduced in VS Code, and is quite useful as well. So what you can do with this is, if you go to some sort of React component, so for example, over here, you can just update this to maybe to-dos, and you can see that the closing bracket got updated as well. So that's pretty cool. It also works on all sort of HTML tags as well. So you can go ahead and enable this setting. Now for the next setting, we have this files.autosave delay. This basically helps you to automatically save the file as the name suggests. And we're going to be waiting for 1 second, and after that, we're going to be saving the file. And we have another setting of format on save. So all these settings work together and they give you a very good editing experience. So if I just go back to this file over here, now if I just try to make some changes over here, you can see that the file is currently edited and it is not saved, denoted by this circle over here. Now if I just switch over to some other file, you can see that it has now saved the file. And since we also have the format on save option enabled, it also has formatted the file according to the default formatter which we have as Prettier. So these are the major settings that I keep in place. The settings keep getting added. So make sure that if you have a lot of settings over here, just go on the settings tab and back up these settings. So that's about it on all the settings that I frequently use on Vscode. Let me know how did you find this video, if you found it useful. If you have some other plugins which I missed over here and you find it useful, please do share it in the comments, and that will be pretty cool as well for all of the people over here. So that's about it for this video. I hope you found that useful. And if you did, please consider subscribing and also liking this video.